In the year 2347, humanity had stretched its reach across the stars, but remained confined to a small corner of the galaxy. Colonies thrived on distant planets, and ships traveled between systems with ease. Yet there were still mysteries waiting beyond explored space, places untouched by human hands or machines. It was in one such uncharted region that the Eos, a research vessel led by Captain Ryland Cross, stumbled upon something extraordinary. The crew of the Eos wasn't expecting much when they entered an area near a dying star. Their mission was routine: map the region and collect data for future colonization efforts. But as their sensors scanned the void, they detected an anomaly. A massive object floating silently against the backdrop of endless darkness. At first glance, it looked like a shard of crystal jutting out from nothingness, glowing faintly with shifting colors. Closer inspection revealed intricate patterns etched into its surface, too precise to be natural. "This thing, it's not just debris," muttered Dr. Ilara Voss, the ship's cynolinguist. Her voice carried both awe and unease as she stared at the holographic display of the artifact. She had spent years studying alien languages and artifacts, yet this was unlike anything she'd ever seen. "It's transmitting something." Captain Cross frowned, his sharp features illuminated by the soft blue light of the bridge. "Transmitting what?" "That's the problem," Ilara replied, her fingers flying over the console. "We can't decode it. The signal is chaotic, almost like it's trying to communicate in multiple ways at once." The artifact, which they dubbed the Beacon, radiated an eerie presence. As the Eos moved closer, strange things began happening aboard the ship. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Crew members reported hearing whispers, soft murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, all at once. Some claimed they saw shadowy figures darting through the corridors, only to vanish when approached. Fear started to creep into the hearts of even the most seasoned explorers. Ilara, however, couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. She spent hours poring over the beacon's signals, convinced it held answers. Late one night, while alone in the lab, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. The air grew heavy, and the hum of the ship's engines faded into silence. Then, without warning, visions flooded her mind. Images of towering cosmic horrors and civilizations reduced to ash. Shadowy figures loomed over her, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of warnings she couldn't understand. "Get away from it," someone shouted, snapping her back to reality. It was Lieutenant Kai Torres, the ship's security officer. His hand rested on his weapon, eyes darting around the room as if expecting danger to materialize. "I'm fine," Ilara said quickly, though her trembling hands betrayed her words. "It's just, whatever this thing is, it's alive. Or at least, part of it is." Kai didn't look convinced. "Captain wants us to keep our distance until we know more. This isn't worth risking lives over." But Ilara shook her head. "You don't understand. If we walk away now, we might miss the chance to learn something incredible. Something that could change everything." Despite growing unease among the crew, Captain Cross allowed limited study of the beacon, under strict supervision. Yet, no one could shake the feeling that they weren't alone anymore. Whatever secrets the beacon held, it was clear they came with a price, and humanity might already be paying it. The days following the discovery of the beacon were tense aboard the Eos. The crew tried to maintain their routines, but the artifact's presence loomed over everything they did. Strange occurrences continued. Equipment failures became more frequent, and the whispers grew louder, almost unbearable at times. Some crew members refused to go near the lab where Ilara worked, convinced the beacon was influencing them in ways they couldn't control. Ilara, however, remained undeterred. She spent every waking moment analyzing the signals emitted by the beacon. Slowly, fragments of images began to emerge, a kaleidoscope of alien landscapes, towering structures, and shadowy figures moving through darkness. Each vision left her with a pounding headache and a sense of dread she couldn't explain. Yet there was something else too, a faint glimmer of hope, as if the beacon wanted to communicate rather than harm. One evening, while reviewing the data alone, Ilara noticed something new. The signals weren't random. They formed patterns, like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. With trembling hands, she adjusted the settings on her console, focusing on one particular sequence. Suddenly, the room seemed to shift around her. The hum of the ship's engines faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, and cold sweat dripped down her back. A figure appeared before her, not solid, but translucent, shimmering like heat waves on a desert horizon. Its form was humanoid yet distorted, its face obscured by swirling mist. It spoke, though no sound came from its mouth. Instead, words echoed directly in her mind, fragmented and disjointed. "Beware, the devourers. They come for all. You must listen." Ilara stumbled backward, clutching her head as the vision overwhelmed her senses. When she blinked, the figure vanished, leaving her gasping for breath. Her heart raced as she replayed the encounter in her mind. Who, or what, had spoken to her? And what were the devourers it warned about? When Lieutenant Kai Torres entered the lab moments later, he found her pale and shaken. "Dr. Voss, are you all right?" he asked, his tone sharp with concern. I don't know," she admitted, struggling to steady herself. "Something just happened. It showed me things." Kai frowned, scanning the room cautiously. "Things. It's trying to tell us something," Ilara said, her voice gaining strength despite her fear. "This isn't just some ancient relic. It's alive, or at least part of it is, and it knows we're here." News of Ilara's experience spread quickly among the crew, sparking heated debates. Many argued that the beacon posed too great a risk and urged Captain Cross to leave immediately. Others, including Ilara, believed it held knowledge humanity couldn't afford to ignore. Tensions reached a breaking point when Dr. Marcus Hale, the ship's chief engineer, disappeared without explanation. He had been working late in the engineering bay, close to the beacon's holding chamber. Search parties scoured the ship but found no trace of him. All that remained was his datapad, lying open on a table, displaying cryptic notes about resonance frequencies and psychic interference. Captain Cross called an emergency meeting in the briefing room. "We can't stay here any longer," he declared firmly. "Whatever this thing is, it's dangerous. We've lost one of our own already." Ilara stood up, her eyes blazing with determination. "And if we leave now, we'll never understand why. This could be the most important discovery in human history. If we walk away, we might doom ourselves, and everyone else, to repeat the same mistakes." Her words hung heavy in the air. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, torn between fear and curiosity. In the end, Cross reluctantly agreed to give Ilara one more day to make progress, but he made it clear, if anything else went wrong, they were leaving, with or without answers. That night, as the ship drifted silently near the beacon, the whispers returned stronger than ever. They seeped into dreams, filling minds with visions of cosmic horrors and civilizations consumed by darkness. For Ilara, the message was clear: time was running out. Whatever secrets the beacon guarded, they were tied to humanity's survival, and perhaps its destruction. The next morning aboard the Eos was anything but ordinary. The crew moved cautiously through the ship, their eyes darting toward every shadow and sound. Something had shifted overnight, something intangible yet undeniable. The beacon's influence seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour, as though it fed on their fear and uncertainty. Ilara woke up exhausted, her mind clouded by fragmented dreams of towering monoliths and endless voids. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone in her quarters. Every creak of the ship's metal hull made her jump, and when she finally ventured out, she noticed others acting strangely too. Lieutenant Kai Torres, usually calm and composed, kept glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone, or something, to appear behind him. "Did you sleep at all last night?" Ilara asked him during breakfast in the mess hall. Kai shook his head, rubbing his temples. Not really. I kept hearing voices, faint whispers, like they were right outside my door. Ilara nodded grimly. You're not the only one. It's happening to everyone. Whatever this thing is, it's getting inside our heads. Captain Cross called another meeting later that day, this time addressing the entire crew. Standing in the briefing room, his expression was stern but weary. We've got reports of equipment malfunctions, hallucinations, and now Dr. Hale's disappearance, he said, pacing back and forth. This isn't just some anomaly anymore. It's a threat. We need to figure out what we're dealing with before it gets worse. Ilara stepped forward, clutching a datapad filled with her latest findings. I think I found something, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. The beacon isn't just transmitting random signals. It's sending fragments of memories, or maybe warnings, from whoever built it. And there's more. I believe it's trying to guide us somewhere. Cross raised an eyebrow. Guide us where? To coordinates deep in uncharted space, Ilara replied. It's subtle, almost hidden within the signal, but it's there. Whoever created the beacon left a trail for others to follow. The room erupted into murmurs. Some crew members looked intrigued, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Are you saying we should go chasing after some alien breadcrumb trail? Kai asked, crossing his arms. After everything that's happened, that sounds insane. It might be our only chance to understand what's going on, Ilara countered. If we leave now, we'll never know why the beacon brought us here, or what dangers might lie ahead if we ignore it. Cross hesitated, clearly torn. Finally, he sighed. All right, we'll investigate these coordinates, but we stay alert. If things get worse, we turn back immediately. Understood. The crew nodded reluctantly, though unease lingered in the air. As preparations began for the journey, strange occurrences continued to plague the ship. Lights flickered unpredictably, and faint whispers echoed through empty corridors. One crew member reported seeing a shadowy figure standing at the end of a hallway, only for it to vanish when approached. Another claimed to have heard their name whispered directly into their ear, though no one else was nearby. That night, Ilara returned to the lab, determined to uncover more about the beacon's secrets. Alone in the dimly lit room, she focused on decoding additional fragments of the signal. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and the hum of the ship's systems faded into silence. Shadows danced unnaturally across the walls, twisting into shapes that defied logic. Then the same translucent figure from before appeared before her once again. This time, its form was clearer, a tall, humanoid silhouette with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. Its voice resonated in her mind, urgent and desperate. The EOs set course for the coordinates embedded in the beacon's signal, venturing deeper into uncharted space. Tension aboard the ship was palpable, a mix of fear and anticipation hanging over the crew like a storm cloud. Captain Cross remained vigilant, his sharp eyes scanning every update from the bridge, while keeping a close watch on his team. Ilara spent most of her time in the lab, analyzing the signal further, but even she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Days passed in uneasy silence until the ship's sensors picked up an anomaly, a massive object drifting in the void ahead. As they approached, the object resolved into view, a derelict alien vessel, its surface pockmarked with damage and scorch marks, as though it had barely survived some catastrophic event. Its design was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Sleek, organic curves blended seamlessly with metallic structures, creating an unsettling hybrid appearance. "This doesn't look like any ship I've seen before," muttered Lieutenant Kai Torres, leaning over the navigation console. "It looks alive." Captain Cross nodded grimly. "Prepare an away team. We need to know what happened here." Ilara joined the team alongside Kai and two engineers, suiting up in protective gear as they boarded a shuttle bound for the mysterious craft. The interior of the alien ship was eerily silent, illuminated only by faint emergency lights that pulsed weakly. Strange symbols glowed softly along the walls, shifting colors as if reacting to their presence. The air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with something unidentifiable yet vaguely organic. As they explored, they discovered evidence of advanced technology fused with biological components, panels that seemed to breathe, cables resembling veins, and consoles that responded to touch with soft hums. It was both fascinating and horrifying, a glimpse into a civilization far beyond human understanding. But it wasn't long before they found signs of tragedy. In one chamber, they stumbled upon recordings left behind by the ship's former occupants. Holographic projections flickered to life, showing terrified aliens scrambling through corridors, their elongated limbs trembling with panic. Their voices overlapped in chaotic bursts, speaking in a language no one could understand. But the tone was unmistakable. Sheer terror. "They're running from something," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling as she watched the footage. Something inside the ship. The recordings ended abruptly, leaving only static. One final image lingered, a grotesque, shadowy figure lunging toward the camera before everything went black. "What the hell was that?" Kai asked, gripping his weapon tightly. His usual confidence was replaced by unease, his eyes darting around the dimly lit room. "I don't know," Ilara admitted, her mind racing. "But whatever it is, it's not natural. And it might still be here." A low growl echoed through the corridor, freezing them in place. The sound was guttural and unnatural, reverberating through the walls, as if the ship itself were alive. Slowly, the group backed away, their movements cautious but hurried. They didn't encounter whatever made the noise, but the oppressive atmosphere grew heavier with each step. Back aboard the Eos, the crew debated whether to continue following the beacon's coordinates. Some argued that the derelict ship was proof enough of the dangers ahead, while others believed abandoning the mission would mean turning their backs on answers humanity desperately needed. Ilara stood firm. "We can't stop now," she insisted, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "That ship proves we're not alone out here. And neither are the threats. If we don't face them, someone else will have to someday." Her words struck a chord, though uncertainty lingered in the air. As the Eos resumed its journey, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just chasing clues, they were being hunted. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, something ancient and malevolent stirred, waiting for them to take the next step into the unknown. As the Eos approached the coordinates transmitted by the beacon, the crew found themselves staring into a cosmic nightmare. Before them stretched an immense nebula, its swirling clouds of gas glowing in hues of crimson and violet. At its heart loomed a black hole, its gravitational pull distorting light into eerie spirals that seemed to twist reality itself. Suspended within this celestial maelstrom was a colossal structure, far larger than the beacon, that pulsed with energy, radiating waves of power across the void. "It's beautiful," Ilara whispered, her voice tinged with awe as she gazed at the structure through the ship's viewport. Its design mirrored the smaller beacon, but on a scale so vast it defied comprehension. Jagged crystalline spires jutted outward like the ribs of some ancient leviathan, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly. Yet, for all its beauty, there was something deeply unsettling about it, a sense of wrongness that prickled the back of everyone's necks. Captain Cross frowned, his hands gripping the railing tightly. "Beautiful or not, we're walking into the unknown. Keep your guard up." The closer they got, the stranger things became aboard the Eos. Equipment malfunctioned without warning, and the whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. Crew members reported vivid hallucinations, seeing shadowy figures lurking just beyond their field of vision. Some claimed to hear voices calling their names, while others saw flashes of terrifying imagery. Civilizations burning, planets crumbling, and monstrous entities rising from the darkness. Ilara, however, experienced something different. As they entered the nebula's outer edge, she felt drawn to the structure, almost magnetically. Her dreams had grown more intense each night, filled with visions of towering beings who called themselves the architects. They spoke of transcending mortality by merging flesh with machine, creating wonders beyond imagination, but also unleashing horrors they could not control. One phrase repeated itself over and over in her mind. The abyss calls. When the EOs finally docked near the structure, Captain Cross insisted on sending only a small team inside. He chose Ilara, Lieutenant Kai Torres, and 2 engineers, arming them with scanners and weapons. The airlock hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in pulsating red light. The walls were covered in the same glowing symbols seen on the derelict alien ship, but here they moved, shifting and rearranging themselves as if alive. "This place is messing with my head," muttered one of the engineers, wiping sweat from his brow. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his scanner. "It feels like it's watching us." Ilara nodded silently, her focus sharp despite the unease creeping up her spine. She noticed that the deeper they ventured, the stronger the hallucinations became. Kai clenched his jaw, visibly struggling to stay composed as shadows flickered around him. Even the engineers began whispering nervously to each other, their movements jerky and uncertain. Then came the visions. Without warning, the group froze as images flooded their minds, visions of their deepest fears and desires. For Kai, it was memories of failure, moments where he hadn't been strong enough to protect those he cared about. For Ilara, it was glimpses of humanity's future, cities crumbling under alien invasions, skies darkened by swarms of incomprehensible creatures. Each vision was tailored to its victim, designed to break them mentally. "We can't let it win," Ilara shouted, snapping herself out of the trance. She grabbed Kai's arm, forcing him to focus. "This isn't real. It's feeding off our emotions. Stay grounded." Her words seemed to anchor the group, pulling them back from the brink. But as they pressed onward, the structure responded. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, and low rumbles echoed through the halls. Something was awakening, and it didn't seem pleased by their presence. At the center of the structure, they discovered what appeared to be a control chamber. A massive console dominated the room, surrounded by floating holograms displaying incomprehensible data. In the middle stood a pedestal glowing with the same energy as the beacon. Ilara stepped forward cautiously, her heart pounding. "This must be how the beacon communicates," she said, reaching out toward the pedestal. "If we can access its core." Before she could finish, the lights dimmed, and a deafening roar shook the chamber. From the shadows emerged tendrils of darkness, writhing and twisting like living smoke. The crew barely had time to react before the tendrils lunged, forcing them to retreat. Back aboard the EOs, the crew scrambled to process what they had witnessed inside the colossal structure. The tendrils of darkness, the oppressive atmosphere, and the visions that preyed on their minds. It all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Whatever the architects had created, it was no longer under their control. As Ilara reviewed the data collected during their brief foray into the structure, fragments of its history began to emerge. The murals etched into the walls told a story both awe-inspiring and horrifying. Long ago, the architects had been masters of genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, blending organic life with machines to achieve unparalleled advancements. They sought to transcend their physical forms, aspiring to become gods among the stars. Their creations, hybrid beings capable of manipulating energy and matter, were meant to usher in an era of enlightenment. But something went wrong. The murals depicted experiments spiraling out of control. Hybrid creatures turned against their creators, driven by instincts neither fully organic nor mechanical. Worse still, these hybrids attracted something far more sinister, an ancient force known as the Devourers. According to the fragmented messages embedded in the structure's systems, the Devourers were cosmic parasites, entities that fed on civilizations, consuming entire species and leaving behind only ruin. "They sealed themselves away," Ilara murmured, her voice trembling as she pieced together the narrative. "They knew they couldn't stop the Devourers, so they locked everything, their technology, their creations, even themselves, inside this structure. They hope to contain the threat forever. Kai stood nearby, his arms crossed as he listened intently. And now we've gone and woken it up. Ilara nodded grimly. We didn't just stumble onto this place by accident. The beacon led us here, for better or worse. Maybe the architects wanted someone to finish what they started. Or maybe, she hesitated, her eyes darkening. Maybe the Devourers lured us here instead. Captain Cross entered the lab, his expression taut with concern. What do we know for sure? We know the structure is amplifying psychic energy, Ilara explained. It feeds off emotions, fear, anger, despair. That's why the hallucinations are getting stronger. And those tendrils, they're part of the hybrid experiments gone wrong. If we don't act soon, the seal holding them and the Devourers will break completely. Cross clenched his fists, clearly torn between duty and survival. Can we destroy it? It's possible, Ilara replied cautiously, but not without risk. The structure's core is tied directly to the black hole at the center of the nebula. Overloading it could collapse the entire system. But if we fail, the Devourers will escape, and there won't be anything left to stop them. Silence fell over the room as the weight of her words sank in. Destroying the structure might save humanity, but it would also mean sacrificing anyone who stayed behind to trigger the overload. One of the engineers spoke up, his voice shaky but resolute. If it means stopping those things from spreading, I'll do it. We can't let them reach Earth. Others began volunteering too, driven by a mix of fear and determination. Yet Ilara shook her head firmly. No, this is my responsibility. I've been closest to the beacon since the beginning. Whatever happens next, I need to see it through. Her resolve silenced any further protests. Though the crew respected her decision, the mood aboard the EOs grew somber. Everyone knew the stakes and the cost of failure. That night, as the ship orbited the structure, Ilara sat alone in the lab, staring at the holographic projections of the architect's murals. She couldn't shake the feeling that the shadowy figure she'd encountered earlier was watching her again, its presence lingering at the edges of her perception. When she closed her eyes, she heard its voice once more, faint but urgent. The plan was simple, yet terrifying in its execution. Using the EO's reactor core, the crew would overload the structure's power grid, triggering a chain reaction that would collapse it into the black hole at the center of the nebula. It was a desperate gamble, one that required precision, courage, and sacrifice. Someone had to stay behind to manually trigger the overload, ensuring the sequence completed even as the structure fought back. Ilara insisted on being the one to remain. I've been closest to this thing since the beginning, she argued, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. If anyone can make this work, it's me. Captain Cross tried to dissuade her, but Ilara's determination left no room for negotiation. Reluctantly, he agreed, ordering the rest of the crew to prepare the EOs for evacuation while buying her as much time as possible. As the countdown began, the atmosphere aboard the ship grew heavy with dread. The engineers worked frantically to reroute the reactor's energy output, sensing it with the structure's systems. Meanwhile, Kai stayed by Ilara's side, his usual stoic demeanor softened by guilt and admiration. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly, handing her a small device. "This will give you 10 minutes before the overload starts. Use it wisely." Ilara nodded, clutching the device tightly. 10 minutes is all I need." With the preparations complete, the crew boarded the EOs, leaving Ilara standing alone at the airlock. As the ship detached from the structure, she took a deep breath and stepped back inside, the massive doors sealing shut behind her. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the structure's pulsating energy. Inside the control chamber, Ilara moved quickly, connecting her equipment to the glowing pedestal at the center. The moment she activated the interface, the structure responded violently. Tendrils of darkness erupted from the walls, writhing like living smoke as they lunged toward her. She dodged them, her movements frantic but precise, her focus unshaken. "You're too late," A voice echoed in her mind, the same shadowy figure from before. This time, its form materialized fully, towering over her with glowing eyes and an aura of ancient power. The seal has already weakened. The devourers are coming. Ilara ignored it, her hands flying over the console as she initiated the overload sequence. Not if I can help it. The entity loomed closer, its presence suffocating. You think destruction will save your kind. You cannot comprehend what lies beyond. I don't need to understand. Ilara shot back, her voice trembling but defiant. All I need to know is that I'm giving humanity a fighting chance. The tendrils coiled around her legs, pulling her down, but she fought against them, activating the final command. A timer appeared on the holographic display. 10 o'clock. 9:59. 9:58. The structure shuddered violently, its lights flickering as alarms blared throughout the chamber. The shadowy figure let out a roar of fury, its form dissolving into the chaos around her. Visions flooded Ilara's mind once more. Images of civilizations consumed by fire, planets reduced to ash, and endless voids filled with writhing shapes. But she forced herself to focus, repeating a single mantra under her breath. For humanity. Outside, the EOs accelerated away from the structure, its engines straining against the gravitational pull of the black hole. On the bridge, Captain Cross watched grimly as the countdown ticked lower on their monitors. Hold together, Ilara, he whispered, gripping the railing tightly. Back inside the structure, Ilara felt the ground quake beneath her feet. The walls cracked, releasing bursts of energy that illuminated the chamber in blinding flashes. Her vision blurred, and her body screamed in exhaustion, but she refused to give up. With seconds remaining, she activated the backup failsafe, ensuring the overload would proceed even if the system failed. 3, 2, 1. A deafening explosion rocked the structure, sending shockwaves rippling through space. From the safety of the EOs, the crew watched in awe as the colossal artifact imploded, collapsing into the black hole with a brilliant burst of light. For a moment, the nebula itself seemed to shudder, its swirling clouds dissipating into nothingness. But amidst the relief, there was sorrow. Ilara was gone, lost in the destruction she had orchestrated. Yet, her sacrifice ensured that the devourers remained sealed for now. As the EOs drifted silently through the void, the crew mourned their fallen comrade, vowing to honor her bravery by preparing humanity for whatever horrors still lingered in the dark corners of Profile. Gwen 2.5 Max. Part 8. Sacrifice and Survival. The EOs drifted in the aftermath of the explosion, its crew shaken but alive. The colossal structure was gone, swallowed by the black hole it had orbited for millennia. Silence filled the ship as the reality of what had just happened settled over everyone. Ilara Voss, the woman who had unraveled the beacon's secrets and faced unimaginable horrors, was no longer with them. Her sacrifice weighed heavily on each member of the crew, a mix of grief and gratitude swirling in their hearts. Captain Ryland Cross stood on the bridge, staring out at the void where the structure once loomed. His jaw was clenched, his hands gripping the railing so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "We made it," he said finally, though his voice lacked any sense of triumph. But at what cost? Kai Torres leaned against the wall nearby, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. He had argued against leaving Ilara behind, but deep down, he knew she had made the only choice possible. Still, her absence left a void that couldn't be filled. "She saved us all," he muttered bitterly. "And we didn't even get to say goodbye." In the lab, the remnants of Ilara's work remained, a clutter of datapads, holographic projections, and notes scrawled hastily during her final hours. The crew avoided the room at first, unable to face the memories it held, but eventually someone had to go through her research. What they found changed everything. Ilara hadn't just triggered the overload blindly. She had recorded fragments of data during those last moments inside the structure. These recordings revealed more about the architects and the devourers than anyone could have imagined. One file contained a message from Ilara herself, addressed to the crew. It played automatically when accessed, her calm yet weary voice filling the silent lab. "If you're hearing this, then I'm gone," she began, her tone steady despite the gravity of her words. "I don't know if humanity is ready for what I've discovered, but we can't afford to ignore it. The architects weren't destroyed by the devourers. They were consumed because they underestimated them. These entities aren't just predators. They're parasites. They feed on fear, chaos, and despair. That's how they spread. If we let our guard down, they'll find us again." The message paused briefly before continuing. "I managed to extract some coordinates from the structure's systems before initiating the overload. They lead to other sites, places where the architects sealed away parts of their creations. Some may still hold answers, or new threats. Be careful. Trust your instincts, and never forget. Knowledge is power, but it comes at a price." The recording ended abruptly, leaving the crew stunned. Ilara's warning echoed in their minds, a stark reminder that their ordeal wasn't truly over. The devourers might be contained for now, but the seals wouldn't hold forever. Humanity's survival depended on staying vigilant. Captain Cross called another meeting in the briefing room, his demeanor somber but resolute. "We came here looking for answers," he said, addressing the crew. "Instead, we found a war we didn't know we were fighting. Ilara gave us a chance to prepare, to learn from the architect's mistakes. We owe it to her to make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." The crew nodded solemnly, determination slowly replacing despair. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, fraught with uncertainty and potential loss. But they also understood that turning back wasn't an option. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was small, but resilience had always been their greatest strength. As the EOs set course for Earth, carrying both survivors and secrets, the crew vowed to honor Ilara's memory. She had shown them the stakes of the cosmic game they were now playing. And though the shadows of the universe stretched long and dark, humanity refused to cower in fear. For every step forward, they carried not only hope, but also the resolve to rise above whatever horrors awaited them. In the distance, stars twinkled like pinpricks of light in an endless sea of darkness. Somewhere among them lay challenges yet unknown, but humanity stood ready to face them, united by courage and purpose. The journey back to Earth was long and somber, the weight of their experiences pressing heavily on the crew of the EOs. Each day felt like a step closer to safety, but also a reminder of what they had left behind. Ilara's absence loomed large, her voice haunting them through the recordings she had left behind. Yet, amidst the grief, there was resolve, a shared determination to ensure her sacrifice would not be forgotten. When the EOs finally entered Earth's orbit weeks later, the sight of the blue-green planet brought mixed emotions. For some, it was relief, a return to familiarity after months adrift in the unknown. For others, it was a stark contrast to the horrors they had witnessed. Humanity's home seemed fragile, almost insignificant compared to the vastness of space and the threats lurking within it. Captain Cross delivered their report directly to the United Galactic Council, an assembly of leaders from Earth and its colonies tasked with guiding humanity's expansion into the stars. The council chamber buzzed with tension as he recounted their harrowing tale. The beacon, the derelict alien ship, the colossal structure, and the devourers. Screens displayed images of the architect's murals and data extracted from the beacon's signals, painting a picture of civilizations consumed by cosmic horrors. "This isn't just our problem," Cross concluded, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. "If we don't prepare for what's out there, humanity won't survive its next encounter with these entities." The council erupted into debate. Some members dismissed the threat as exaggerated, arguing that resources should focus on colonization efforts rather than hypothetical dangers. Others, however, were visibly shaken, recognizing the implications of the crew's discoveries. One counselor, Dr. Leela Chen, stood up, her expression grave. "We've always assumed we were alone, or at least unthreatened, in this galaxy. If even half of what you say is true, then we're standing on the edge of an abyss." Ilara's recordings played a pivotal role in swaying opinions. Her calm, measured explanations of the architect's downfall and the nature of the devourers resonated deeply. When the recording ended, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the chamber systems. In the days that followed, humanity began preparing for the future Ilara had warned about. Scientists pored over the data collected by the EOs, studying the architect's technology and devising ways to detect and combat psychic influences like those emitted by the beacon. Military strategists developed protocols for encounters with extraterrestrial threats, while diplomats worked to unify Earth's fractured governments under a single banner of survival. For the surviving crew of the EOs, life slowly returned to normal, but nothing could erase the scars they carried. Kai Torres spent hours in the gym, channeling his guilt and anger into physical exertion. The engineers threw themselves into their work, designing safeguards against similar anomalies. And Captain Cross, he found himself staring at the stars more often, wondering how many other secrets lay hidden in the darkness. Yet, amid the fear and uncertainty, hope flickered like a candle in the wind. The crew knew they had faced something far greater than themselves and lived to tell the tale. Their story spread across the globe, inspiring millions to look beyond their fears and embrace the challenges ahead. Humanity wasn't ready for the devourers, not yet, but they were learning. As the sun set over Earth, casting golden light across oceans and cities, the crew gathered one last time aboard the EOs. They raised glasses in silent tribute to Ilara, whose bravery had given them a fighting chance. Whatever came next, they vowed to face it together, united by courage, curiosity, and the unyielding belief that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons or technology, but in its ability to rise above adversity. Months passed since the crew of the EOs returned to Earth, but their story continued to ripple through humanity like waves on an endless ocean. The United Galactic Council had taken decisive action, channeling unprecedented resources into preparing for the existential threat posed by the devourers. Research facilities sprang up across the globe, dedicated to studying the architect's technology and developing countermeasures against psychic manipulation. Military forces underwent rigorous training, learning how to combat enemies that defied conventional understanding. Yet it wasn't just governments and scientists who were inspired. Ordinary people looked to the stars with newfound determination. The tale of Ilara Voss, a lone woman willing to sacrifice everything for the survival of her species, became a symbol of hope. Schools taught her story as an example of courage and selflessness, while artists immortalized her in paintings, songs, and films. Humanity began to see itself not as fragile beings clinging to a small planet, but as explorers destined to face the unknown and triumph. Captain Rylan Cross found himself at the center of this movement. Though he preferred solitude after such a harrowing ordeal, he embraced his role as a leader. He traveled the world, addressing crowds and urging unity. "We've spent centuries looking outward," he said during one speech, standing before thousands gathered in a massive auditorium. "But now we must look inward too. Our strength lies not in our machines or weapons, it lies in our ability to adapt, to learn, and to rise together." Kai Torres also found purpose in the aftermath. Haunted by guilt over leaving Ilara behind, he threw himself into training new recruits for space missions. His gruff demeanor softened over time, replaced by a quiet mentorship style that earned him respect among cadets. "Fear doesn't make you weak," he often told them. "It makes you human. What matters is what you do when you're afraid." Meanwhile, the engineers aboard the EOs played key roles in advancing humanity's defenses. Using insights from the beacon and the colossal structure, they developed devices capable of detecting psychic interference, early warning systems designed to prevent another tragedy like the one that claimed Dr. Marcus Hale. Their work became instrumental in safeguarding future expeditions into deep space. Back on Earth, life moved forward, yet reminders of the cosmic horrors lingered. Nightmares still plagued some members of the crew, and debates raged within the council about whether humanity should continue exploring uncharted regions of the galaxy. But Ilara's final message echoed in everyone's minds. Knowledge was power, even if it came at a cost. One evening, Captain Cross stood alone on a hill overlooking the city lights below. The sky above shimmered with countless stars, each one a potential mystery waiting to be unraveled. For a moment, he thought he heard Ilara's voice, a faint whisper carried by the wind. But when he turned, there was no one there. As he gazed upward, a sense of calm washed over him. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger because of it. They weren't ready to confront the Devourers, not yet, but they were learning. Every discovery, every invention, and every act of bravery brought them closer to standing toe-to-toe with whatever horrors lurked beyond. The universe was vast, filled with wonders and terrors alike. But humanity had proven something vital. They could endure. They could rise. And most importantly, they could dream. In the distance, a shooting star streaked across the heavens, its light brief but brilliant. Somewhere out there lay challenges yet unknown. But humanity stood ready, united under a shared belief that even in the face of darkness, they would find their way into the light.